What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Rising Sun Podcast. I'm Dean Howell. Hey, as a reminder, the views expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers alone and do not represent the views of the United States government, the Department of Defense, or any of its components. Hey, I do want to talk about a couple of our partners and friends of the podcast. The first one is Prize Crew Coffee. Listen, guys, this is the best stuff out there. It's a veteran-owned business. It's one of my good friends actually up in the Pac Northwest that runs Prize Crew Coffee. If you don't know what a prize crew is, it's basically in the days of sail, these ships would go out and, defeat other ships at sea and then take their shit, right? That was a prize crew. So they bring that ship home and get paid for it. But so it's a nautical term, right? And, we're nautical guys. So I'll tell you what, man, if you go to their website right now, prizecrewcoffee.com, and use promo code SAIL, that's SAIL, you're going to get 10% off at checkout. Listen, I like Molly's Dark and Stormy Blend, but they've got so many different kinds, right? They've got white coffee. They've got the Honduran honey processed single origin. Listen, maple bourbon barrel aged coffee. I mean, they also do emblematics, coins, hats, things like that. So do me a favor, guys, go over to prizecrewcoffee.com, check them out. And again, use SAIL, SAIL, at checkout for a 10% discount. Another partner of the podcast, really, it's a personal partner of mine. I'm a brand ambassador for Lions Not Sheep. If you don't know about Lions Not Sheep, it's a great company, American owned and operated by none other than the man, Sean Whalen himself. They're out of Utah. Fresh threads, t-shirts, hoodies, socks, just a cool clothing apparel line. And something that I rock pretty much all the time, right? That's pretty much the only t-shirts I wear from Lions Not Sheep. So if you go over to Lions Not Sheep and check them out, use promo code LNSDEAN, that's LNSDEAN, at checkout. And again, you're going to get 10% off when you check out. Okay, so we talked about our partners of the podcast, and they're the things that help this thing go. And so the guest I had on today was awesome, and we'll get into the episode here in a second. So Chris Cook, he is just a pretty awesome dude. He was a merchant mariner. You'll see his full bio in the description below, but he's the founder of Odyssey Training and Consulting, and they run all types of gun courses from basic to low level CQB. I mean, he's doing big things out there in the Salt Lake area. So you can find him on Instagram, Odyssey_TC. That's Odyssey Training and Consulting. It's easy to find on Instagram, and he runs a real cool Instagram page, man. He talks about gun dummies and all kinds of stuff, right? But I'll tell you what, man, this is one of my favorite conversations that I've had so far, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it too. He's just a really put together dude. He's a guy that is a master of his craft and is passionate about making sure that American citizens and that family members and dads and moms, that you're able to defeat evil when the time comes. And so he's got a pretty awesome mission over there at Odyssey Training and Consulting. So go check him out on Instagram. And I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. Like I said, it was one of my favorite ones that I've done to date. So without further ado, Chris Cook. Chris, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate it. It's good to talk to you in person and all that kind of stuff. Happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure, man. We, as happens very frequently these days, kind of linked up over Instagram, and I think through Brian Bishop is where we made the connection. If I'm not mistaken,
totally,
right?
Brian's a good dude. He's a local friend of mine. Runs a good podcast and stuff. He came to one of my classes late last year, and we've been connecting a little bit since then and everything.
Yeah, he's a cool dude, man. So I got linked up with him through Matt Vincent over at Not Dead Yet. And they had done a podcast that I listened to, and I was like, holy shit, who is this Brian Bishop motherfucker, man? He sounds cool as shit,
Yep.
And he and I have kind of, been going back and forth, and just a cool motherfucker. He's an old Marine and everything. And but yeah, I was happy to link up with you and have you on the Rising Sun podcast, man, because I follow you on Instagram, and you know, that's what you learn about people,
Sure.
especially if you're in my situation where I'm like in Japan, and so like I'm kind of very remote when it comes to all these things. But man, you've got a pretty cool fucking thing going over there in Utah, and we'll get into that, right? But
Sure.
I, I always start my podcast here, man. I just think it's super important, like, you know, how you grow up as a kid and like through adolescence and high school. I mean, this isn't my idea. It's proven through science and everything else, but it's like super important to inform the story of your life, right? And like how you got to where you're at now, you know? So,
Absolutely.
Chris, if you don't mind, man, I'd love to hear like the Chris Cook origin story.
Gotcha. It's not going to sound like a comic book superhero, but I'll try. No, yeah, my name's Chris Cook. I run a shooting performance and self defense training company out of Salt Lake City, Utah, called Odyssey Training and Consulting. I've been doing that for just over 4 years now, and been a self defense and training nerd for just over 12 years now. So that's kind of what I do, right? But I grew up in Houston, Texas, just outside the Johnson Space Center. So NASA was a big thing for me. You know, it was like all NASA stuff, right? My high school sports coach was an astronaut. You know, all that kind of stuff. Grew up in Houston, you know, did a lot of boating and all of that. My family business, kind of like my dad, grandpa, all of that is all in the maritime industry. So they were all merchant mariners from different academies around the country and stuff. So when I was growing up, that was kind of the path for me for college. So I went to a Federal Service Academy for college, went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, which not a lot of people know about. Got out of there in 2015 and was a merchant mariner for a few years. So that was, you know, kind of very broad strokes on where I was and all that kind of stuff. And then in college and everything. But for what I did now, I was a, military history and shooting nerd since I could walk. That was just like, I don't know what happened, but I gravitated to like military history books and, action movies and all that kind of stuff. So I was totally a nerd about it. And then shot a lot more in like high school and stuff. That's my dad like got really into guns and everything, and competed in handgun shooting in high school a little bit. And then that just kind of carried out into adulthood, taking training classes from, a lot of nationally known people and pursuing firearms and self-defense training, combatives, martial arts a little bit. And that kind of brought me all to what Odyssey is, today, where it's a little bit of like a maritime element. It's a little bit of like a shooting and training and fighting people element. And it's, it's all good stuff.
Dude, Houston, huh?
Yeah, man. It was, I was actually thinking about it today. I have not been back in like 18 months, and I'm totally cool with that. I think I'm good,
Yeah, I mean, Houston is one of those cities that like, first of all, it's like the most sprawling metropolis in the entire United States because of the annexation laws,
totally,
down there. But, if you get around like Spring, Cypress, like the outs, kind of the rim of Houston,
suburbs.
Yeah, there's some cool spots out there, man, like Lake Conroe and places like that,
Yeah. My wife is from Cyprus, so I spent a good amount of time up there.
Yeah.
And then my parents went to school in Galveston and stuff, so we went to Galveston a good bit. And then I was from Clear Lake, so like halfway between Houston and Galveston.
Okay, yeah, Clear Lake, yeah.
But bounced around the city a whole bunch. My brother lived in Midtown for a while, so went into the city. I'll tell you what, if you ever want to feel the urge to carry a gun, hang out in Houston for a while, and
100%, bro. 100%.
You'll be like, you know what? I think I need a gun.
I should probably have a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%,
yeah, man. So like, I grew up in Louisiana.
Yeah.
I mean, grew up hunting mainly, but we shot for fun too. And not a lot with handguns, if I'm being totally honest, right? Like it was more rifles and shotguns and things like that. Typical Louisiana hunting. And then we moved to Texas. So I actually graduated from Vidor High School. I don't know if you know where that is.
Oh boy. No way. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great time.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a culture shock because I moved from Louisiana, which was a very small town, but it was a very diverse town, if you will. And then like freshman year of high school, found myself out on Sam Rayburn, which is where my mom lives now,
Yep.
and where I'll retire. I'll retire out on Sam Rayburn when it's all said and done.
Okay.
So I found myself out there, and then we moved to Vider, and then I finished high school there. Went to Lamar University, before I
Okay.
joined the Navy and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so yeah, man, Southeast Texas, it's a great spot. If
Mhm.
you get a little outside of Houston, it's still a great spot. Hot as fuck,
Yeah.
but
It's ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, my parents have a house out in Brenham,
okay,
like halfway to Austin,
yeah,
and I love it
yeah,
out there.
oh yeah,
But like been in and out of ship stuff in Houston, Galveston, Texas City, Beaumont,
mm-hmm.
Port Arthur, Corpus, all of that, and
Yeah,
I've always seen it from the ocean side.
yeah,
And every time I was just like, man, it's so hot. It's so hot.
yeah,
So
man. So so you did MSc basically, right? So
yep. Yep. So I graduated in 2015. So for people who don't know, the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy is a Federal Service Academy, one of the 5 Federal Service Academies,
yep.
and our specialty is cargo shipping and logistics, right? The maritime industry, and graduating merchant mariners, like licensed officers for civilian cargo ships. So I was a deck officer. So you got the deck officers and the engine officers. Um, and so that's all the navigation, being on the
Mhm.
bridge, right 10, left 10, dead
Yeah.
slow ahead on the engine, all that kind of stuff. And did my time there from 2011 to 2015. My brother was a year ahead of me, so I had some family there too at the same academy. But it was a crazy school. I got to say, like it's very weird to have to go, like when you tell people what you have to do at the academy, where you're like, oh, like we don't get a summer break, and it's like, okay, well, it's busy, but then like all the weird rules for the plebes and like how the
Mhm.
rank structure works,
Yeah.
it's all weird. But out of that 4-year time, I did a grand total of a year at sea, doing on the job training as a cadet on other ships. So I did two different container ships and an oil tanker during my cadet time, and one of those container ships was on the Maritime Security Program. So they're a civilian-owned ship, manned by civilians, working for a civilian company, but they're carrying military cargo as part of the supply program. And we got to we went to the Far East and back. So we went to the Middle East. Sorry, went to the Middle East and back. So I went to Persian Gulf, India, Pakistan, Oman, all that stuff. Carried a bunch of cargo back from the global war on terror. And then when I graduated, I sailed on a couple different ships, a couple different oil tankers and stuff. And one of them was contracted to Military Sealift Command. So that was, again, a civilian owned ship manned by civilians. But that was permanently contracted to the Defense Logistics Agency, Military Sealift Command, all Transcom, all that kind of stuff, to be dedicated for military cargo. And we would carry diesel fuel, jet fuel, all that kind of stuff to military bases around the world. That one was a little bit more serious because we were fully contracted to MSC. So we had CBurn equipment, we had an arms locker, we had to go through like a small arms course and stuff. But we're still civilians, right? So I'm still working for a private corporation. I wasn't a government employee or anything like that. The dudes that do MSC full time are on the gray hulls. So kind of got a little bit of taste of it at the end before I stopped shipping.
Right. Did you ever make any trips over to the Far East, so Japan?
Yeah, I did
Places like
a
that.
couple trips over there. So yeah, the ship I was on was typically dedicated to the West Coast. So we did like Puget Sound, Seattle, Tacoma, San Francisco, Long Beach, San Diego, Point Loma, all that kind of stuff. And then we got changed around on the contract to go to the Far East, and then I did two trips in the Far East. The first one I got on in Osaka, Japan, and we went to Sasebo a good bit, went to Yokohama a good bit, in Tokyo Bay, did the Philippines, did Subic Bay, and did Guam, and then South Korea. So bounced around,
Yeah.
And then the second trip was just a whole ton of Guam, Japan, and South Korea. Spent a bunch of time at anchor in Sasebo Bay.
Yeah.
So I saw the Navy base there quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
Got
man.
got a tattoo there, like you do when you're
Nice.
overseas.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So yeah, I got to see quite a bit. Far East is super cool to work with the locals and stuff, because we're working with the dock personnel, doing cargo transfers and stuff. Japanese people, Korean people, super cool. Philippines is a little weird. Guam was super awesome. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed my time over there.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. The Philippines is a little weird, but I've been there so
Yeah,
many times, man. Like I'm a Far East sailor, so I mean, name the spot, right?
right.
Thailand, Kota Kinabalu, Singapore. So many times I can't even count.
Yeah.
Um,
You ever hop down to like Australia, New Zealand, anything like that?
I've been, dude. So I've been to so New Zealand. I'll get to that one in a second. But Darwin a couple of times, Perth a couple of times, Townsville, Brisbane. Never made it
Okay,
to Sydney though, right? And so
you're right.
I'm lucky enough that with the job that I have now, so I'm the command master chief of our ship repair facility. So it's like a regional maintenance center, and we handle all the maintenance in the side of the
Damn,
world.
that's like a big deal, bro.
It's not bad. I mean, it's a good gig, and
Yeah, it's a good gig.
yeah, and 3,000 employees. Who's counting? It is what it is. Yeah. Um,
Of
but
course, you'd know.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
am lucky enough to have a dive locker here at the RMC,
Hmm.
and those guys, Navy divers, I mean, they go all over the world. They have to certify chambers, and if in case of a conflict, which we can talk about later, but in case of a conflict with, let's just say, a near peer competitor in this AOR,
Hmm.
we have to have kind of like a fallback plan, and then we have to exercise our ability to do battle damage assessment and repair. And so we're doing an exercise down in Sydney next month, and so I'll be down
Okay.
there for about 8 days. So I'll finally get to go to Sydney, and I'm not pulling in on a ship. It's pretty cool, right? So
Okay.
yeah, I'm stoked,
Gotcha.
man. Yeah, I'm stoked. But so I did want to ask you. So you know, you run Odyssey, and obviously like firearms and self defense. That's your passion, right? Like you
Totally.
love it, and it sounds like you did some of that when you were younger.
Hmm.
But how much training do they give you? In the MSC, like is it pretty minimal, pretty basic kind of
Yeah, it's
firearms
pretty
training?
bad, man. Yeah. So I got exposed to professional firearms instruction before I entered the military.
Right.
Right. So I was shooting competitions with squared away pistol shooters. Um, in high school, and then literally my gift for my 18th birthday was my dad and I went and took a professional training class at Blackwater's training facility in Moyock, North Carolina. So we went there for 5 days and did like a carbine, did like a rifle class, and that's when I was like, oh man, like this is what like professionalism in the profession of arms looks like. The lead instructor was a former Canadian JTF2 guy, their tier one unit. And I was like, okay, like this is what squared away looks like. And this is the methodology to get people into proper instruction. Like people need to go to class. And then from there, I that was literally like a month before I reported for NDOC at the academy. And in NDOC, you get to shoot. We have a pistol range on the academy grounds, and like you literally get to shoot 10 rounds out of an M9. That's it's a little fam fire kind of deal. I never even took the Navy pistol qualification. Um, so like when I showed up and they were like, hey, so like hold it like this and hold it like that, I was like, okay, should I? You sure? You sure
Sure
about
about
that?
that? Yeah.
You're a third classman, like you're 1 year older than me, and yeah. So you shoot 10 rounds, and that was fun. And then I got to teach that a little bit later in like the summer programs when I was starting to get into an upperclassman, not by choice. I failed calculus my freshman year and had to go to summer school. So in the summers when it's either summer school to get people caught up, or it's in doc to get all the new kids trained to get into the academy. And they were like, hey man, like you're a gun dude, we need like instructors down at the range to like walk the kids through an M9. So I got to do that a little bit. But then when I was home from for like summer break or winter break from the academy time, or when I was home from ship after the academy, I was taking training classes all around. I would just, I had to have 2 months off, or I'd have 2 weeks off, or I'd have something in between. And I figure out, oh, this guy is teaching this class in, Victoria, it's
Mhm.
only a 2.5, or Waco, or something like
Right.
that. And I'd drive out and I'd sleep in my car, and I'd go, shoot. And I was, again, looking for those super high level people in our industry. So I was getting a lot of really good training. And then when it was time for me to go on the MSC contracted ship, that's when they were like, hey, you need to get the small arms certification. You need to take the like security reaction force class, which is like a 3-day like ship CQB class for the officers. That's atrocious. And that was my first exposure to mandatory disinterested training, where I showed up at the MSC small arms course. I think it was a 5-day course, and it's pistol rifle shotgun. It's the M14. It's a Mossberg 500 pump action shotgun.
Man, I was just like, it's on my notes.
Yeah, bro.
M14. Like, so we'll talk about the M14. Please continue.
100p, bro.
That's my fucking dude. I fucking love that gun.
Okay,
we're gonna. One. Yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
I'm gonna unfriend you in real life. So yeah, it was M14. It was Mossberg 500, and it was a Beretta M9. Certification, live fire qual at the end. And I showed up to the class, and everybody else there didn't want to be there and doesn't like guns. They're a chief engineer or chief mate on some other ship, and they're like, I gotta every 2 years I have to come recertify because I've been doing this MSC contract for 25 years, and they're just there again, to get their qual. They don't like guns. They don't own guns outside of, when they're home. So everyone kind of had a, chip on their shoulder, didn't want to be there. And then the instructors also didn't care. They were all former, it's in Florida. So it was like Broward County Sheriff's deputies that now found like a good retirement gig. One guy was an officer in the Coast Guard and had done nothing but his annual qual. He had never not a security detachment guy
or anything. Yeah.
Nothing like that. So I looked left and right and was like, okay, like this isn't necessarily like, we can talk about whether the training is good or not, like what your PowerPoint and your curriculum is, or are you training us the right way? But like, regardless of how this class is built, this class is useless because no one here wants to be here or cares. And that opened my eyes a lot. And I hadn't even thought of being an instructor before then, and was kind of like, okay, like if this is the state of concealed carry classes around the country, if this is the state of most people's military training, where they have some guy who, got on the range staff and is just puppy milling people through basic rifle marksmanship or whatever, I was like, okay, like this is not good.
Right.
So, funnily enough, I failed the qual. I say all that to say,
fuck this class.
No, I shot there. So it was, the rifle qual did fine at, the shotgun qual, did fine at, and then the pistol qual was doing fine. And I think the last stage was from a knee. So from kneeling, fire like 8 rounds in 15 seconds or something like that at 15 yards. Real easy standard. And they were real adamant on you must kneel and then draw the firearm. And their reasoning was you are going to violate muzzle control if you draw and people take a knee next to you, you would end up pointing the gun at them. If you draw terribly and have no muzzle awareness, then you'll end up pointing the gun at somebody. And I was kind of like, well, this dude can take a knee or this dude can not take a knee, but his feet are right there. Like, if you violate muzzle control, whether he's on a knee or not, you're still going to flag him in some way. And that's, not what we would do tactically. We probably have the gun out and then we take a knee. All these, we'll get into all of it. Sure. But I was like, kind of like, get this, you watch this, like I was into it. Yeah. And I stripped the gun out of the holster and they're like, don't do that. And I was like, I didn't remember y'all said, don't do that. And I took a knee and they were like, that's a DQ. You'll half the class needs to retest anyways, so you'll retest, and did fine on the retest. Sure. But I like how they were like, yeah, half the people here have to requal. So
yeah, yeah.
So that was a good time, and that was a good exposure. And then taking the security reaction force class, which is a 3-day tactics class, no live fire.
Yep.
That was taught, again by a dude who was a chief mate in MSC for 15 years and then took the qualifying instructor class for this class. Never done CQB, never been in a professional unit, nothing like that. And they were pretty disinterested and stuff. Got to wear old surplus Paz Gat helmet and interceptor body armor and all that, and shoot airsoft guns at each other.
Yeah.
And then I recerted on that, actually on a ship. So they actually brought an instructor out and certified us on the vessel, which is pretty cool because we could use the same geometry that we're working with anyway. So it's like, hey, let's actually do a scenario on deck. Let's do one in the bridge. Let's do one, and you're actually using the ship that you'd be on.
Right.
That instructor was a former Florida bail recovery agent.
He was Dog the Bounty Hunter in Florida.
Dog the Bounty Hunter, man. He was, super overweight, and, and thought he knew what he was talking about. He's like, yep, I've recovered people, and okay, man, like, I'm really glad this isn't live fire. That's all I'm going to say. So, so in my time there, got a little bit of training, not a lot, but that really exposed me to like what bad training looks like. Got out of that, kept taking better classes that I was selected with the instructor and stuff like that. And then, was able to say, hey, I think I've got the ability to impart some knowledge here. I think I've grown enough of a body of knowledge with this being my passion for long enough that I could, become an instructor. And then where I'm at right now, TNT Guns and Range in Salt Lake. I was working here. I became the training director here, kind of where I got my start teaching. I'm still the training director here. I'm, teaching here tonight. And yeah, from then it was, Odyssey was off to the races, and I think Odyssey's only gotten better. We very much focus on the civilian self-defense problem.
Right.
Like
which is a totally different problem than shipping a box.
Totally. And, and so much of our training world is people who are professionals at military and law enforcement shooting and tactics. And they are really good at those things. And the assumption is that those will translate. It's like, oh yeah, like what we did in the Marine Corps, the principles of fire and maneuver are sound principles, but we'll just go teach civilians that. It's like, well, not really, man. Like the principles matter, but like the methodology might need to change. So in recent times with more curriculum development and stuff like that, really drilling down into what is the civilian self-defense problem. In many ways, it's simpler and easier than a law enforcement or a military problem. And in many ways, it's more complicated and more difficult. So how do we give good training to the people who need it, who carry a gun every day to protect their family or have a gun for home defense? What's the problem they're likely to face? And then what do they need to know to solve it?
Yeah. I've had quite a bit of training myself, and it's all been military training, obviously. I mean,
sure.
On my first ship down in Sasebo, this was just after 9/11. And so we had what was called Ship Self-Defense Force. We called it SSDF.
Yep.
And they knew I was a country boy. And so like I had to kind of learn to use the Beretta. I wasn't great with it at first.
Yep.
But the reason why I talk about the M14 is because it was just so simple, man. It was iron sights. And like, man, when I shot for ribbon with that, it was like first try, like the easy day. I've been shooting rifles my whole life,
Yep.
And it was just such a basic weapon, wooden stock. Just like I felt like I was shooting.
All you need is a bayonet, and
exactly.
you can go storm the hill. Right?
Yeah. So, but so we did ship self-defense force, and we learned some tactics and shipboard maneuvering type stuff there. Still pretty basic, but then when I went through Ship Reaction Force Advanced, that was an actually really good class. And I got lucky because the instructors were, gunner's mates and fire controlmen that had experience in these type of things. And then also we had a retired Marine that was like the lead instructor. And, he was a fast guy in the Marines.
Good.
And it was really good. They had a full ship in a box mock-up. We learned how to clear the pier. We were using sim rounds the whole time.
Cool.
You had the full weight of the Beretta,
a real gun,
or the M4. They were just firing sim rounds, right? And but kind of to your point, that's great and all, but when we talk about in the military, we talk about escalation of force and deadly force and those type of things. Those are sound principles, like you were saying, I think, in the military, but those things have to be a little more.
They just need to be contextualized, right? The principles of interpersonal conflict translate across modality. Missile warfare and gas station robbery has certain things about offense, defense. Like there's principles of interpersonal conflict. But as long as they're contextualized and we can say, hey, here's what it might look like for you, and say there's stuff that other people may not train at. And another big one is big one when it comes to civilian self-defense training versus some, especially when dudes have been in high level combat arms units,
Right.
where they were training without limitation, right? Dudes that have been in a tier 1 unit, there is no limitation. There's no cap on ammo. There's no cap on time. There's no cap on type of training or the type of instructor that they can bring in. And everyone also has unlimited desire, right? Like your whole team wants to go do CQB with you,
right?
Whenever you ask the team to go to want to do CQB, right? Whereas in law enforcement is a big one where they're training under limitation quite a bit. I took a class 3 weeks ago, by a law enforcement centric company called Centrifuge Training, and it was a vehicle tactics class. And one of the biggest things I learned about that was how to teach people a thing given the limitations of their own training program, and being able to say, hey, tactic A may be actually better. Like if we put it on paper and we really research stuff, we may figure out the best way to solve a problem is tactic A. And then we look at it and say, okay, the training requirements to get a human being with their own like natural survival instincts and stress responses and stuff like that, we could get a person to do A despite danger and fear and all those kinds of things if we could do it in 40 hours or 60 hours or 80 hours of training. That person, we could rewire their nervous system and they could do tactic A. And then we look at the department's training schedule and say, okay, you're going to get 2 hours of training a year. Okay, so this person could work their entire 20-year career and never get more training than is neurologically required to perform tactic A, which is actually better. Tactic B works with natural human survival instincts. It's probably what they're going to do anyways, and we can refine it and tweak it a little bit and make sure that they know what they're doing when they do it. And we can do that for 2 hours a year, and they'll probably get a 95% solution. There might be that one bad guy who's really, really good that you really need a tactic A for.
Sure.
But tactic B is going to work for pretty much everybody, and it is within scope of the training limitations that we have.
That's actually a very interesting way of looking at things. Like, this is going to sound crazy, but the way that I interpret that is like good enough training. Like good enough training that you can get more with more frequency, right?
Yep. And some guys don't like that, right? And dudes who are passionate about this stuff don't like that, right? You're not going to tell an NFL player, here's a playbook that's going to work 80% of the time.
Right.
They're like, dude, I'm an NFL player. Like I want a Super Bowl. I want a championship. I want to go up against the hardest type of people, and I want to win any type of situation. I want a playbook that has an option for everything.
Right.
And that dude kind of brushes up against, maybe limited training. But when you look at, for example, like the actual mandatory training requirement in Utah is 4 hours of lecture. If you want to get a concealed carry permit and, carry a firearm concealed in public, outside of constitutional carry, the permit class is a 4-hour lecture class. So as an instructor for that, I have to look at and say, okay, looking at the data of information of student retention, none of these people are going to take another class. There's a ton of other training that they need to know. You need to know how to shoot in low light. You need good combatives training. You need a medical class. You need like a TC3 class. You need verbal agility. You need boxing. You need draw stroke speed. Like there's a ton of stuff you need for the civilian self-defense problem. I get them for 4 hours.
Right.
So what can I give them in 4 hours to give them the best chance if they never take another class, which is most likely, but then also equips them with the desire to take more training as good as possible. So How do I say, if this is all that you've got, here's the best I can give you, without saying none of this stuff is really good. You're actually going to need 25 hours of training. Come take all my training classes and make it a giant sales pitch.
Right. Yeah. That's
balancing that.
It's a kind of a thing that you have to straddle, right? Like you want to get clients, but at the same time, realistically, most people, they just want it. They want to get their permit.
If I said, hey, you're never going to get anything good in 4 hours, this is all kind of a wash. You just have to be here mandated by the state. We're going to kind of brush through this, but you really need to come to my special class, and it's 5 times the price. And it's you got to get a babysitter because you got to come out on a Saturday, and and start telling people, they're like, it's not going to happen, right? Whether I want it to or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that I've been focusing on quite a bit now is how to change the way we've typically been doing things for the actual client and the problem that we're trying to do.
I love it, man. So do you teach those courses out of TNT, or is that part of Odyssey, right?
So it's kind of both and. So
uh,
I'm contracted as the training director for TNT, and I've
okay,
been that for just over 4 years. I teach our basic pistol class. I teach our Utah, concealed firearms
sure,
permit class. We also have an AR-15, basic, like you just bought an AR. How does it work kind of class? We're
right,
coming out with a medical response class
good,
too, all under the TNT brand. And then we've also, through all of that, we've got an instructor development program that I've got staff members under me that are staff instructors that teach some of those same classes. I'm the one who teaches them state mandated because I've got the state certification, but everything else, how to do basic safety, doesn't require a certification. And they've all taught, been under me for a while, and we're kind of building them as staff instructors. And then the medical response class, we've got a couple of Army combat medics that are in the National Guard here locally. We've got EMTs on staff, all that kind of stuff. So we'll put together a medical class. All of those same things I also teach under Odyssey independently at other ranges around Salt Lake County, Utah County, all the kind of area
right,
around here. And then
yeah,
I also teach the more advanced, pistol, rifle, low light, all those kind of tactics classes at an outdoor training facility that's like an hour south of here.
nice. So how'd you find yourself in Utah, man? I'm just curious.
Yeah, my wife's family, she grew up in Cyprus, and her whole dad's side of the family is all Texans, and then her whole mom's side of the family is all Utahns. So when we were getting married, she was graduating college. I was a merchant mariner, so I was like, well, we can live anywhere we want. They'll just fly me to the ship. And we were kind of looking for an adventure a little bit, so we looked at Utah, and we're like, oh, this is pretty cool. Especially like talking about Houston with the widespread metropolis, and it's an hour drive to get anywhere, and in Salt Lake it's 15 minutes to get anywhere. So we jumped up here in 2017, right after we got married, and I shipped out of here for a couple of years after that. So that's kind of how we ended up here, and then we kind of we've had our first kid here, and we're all we're here to stay, kind of.
Yeah, it seems like a great spot, man. I've been up there. I've skied up there several times.
Mm-hmm.
My family, we're all, except for Mr. Black Sheep here, we're all like BYU graduates, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
But wasn't really my cup of tea, and
Sure.
so I found myself in Pattaya, Thailand instead. I mean,
That's going to be that's the pendulum swinging in the other
yeah,
side.
so exactly. But I spent a lot of time up there. We skied at Snow Basin and all the different spots. Obviously, Park City. It's just a
Totally.
beautiful, beautiful part of the
It's
country,
hard to beat,
man.
man. I mean, we're right next to the mountains. You got beautiful views. You got beautiful outdoor stuff. We've got a really good like firearms and training community that's been built up over the last 5 years or so. For a long time, Utah was always this black hole in the training community where everyone would always like all the big names who travel the country, 30 weeks, 40 weeks of the year, teaching classes everywhere. No one would come to Utah forever. And it was just, they didn't have the student base. They didn't have the people who lived here that were interested in really expensive training like that. And finally, over the last 5 years, we've got a couple of really good ranges that serve as really good hosts for instructors and stuff. So then we get big name instructors come in here now, which means that we've got a bunch of other people who are into training. We've got training clubs and groups. People like me that are more of a local guy. We got half a dozen of us now that all run our own companies that are all competitors, for the local client base, but we all work together really, really well. We all collaborate really well. We share curriculum. We'll do collaborative classes and stuff. So it's a really positive environment for people who are serious about firearms and serious about self-defense. Like you have a lot of really good options in here, which just makes the whole community safer. So
yeah, and Utah is a very 2A friendly state, as is Texas, and I just think that as you kind of see the landscape of Utah, it's changed drastically in the last 20 years. I mean, a lot
Yep.
of people have moved there for a variety of reasons, just like what you're talking about, right? Safety for your family,
Yeah, all the Californians moving out here,
values, property is not as expensive if you were in some of the, Colorado these days or California.
Yep.
So it seems like a really good option for a lot of people, man. And
I dig it, man. I don't want anyone else to move here because our housing
yeah,
market is horrible. I
yeah,
just bought a house earlier, our second house earlier this year, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
yeah,
But yeah, no, we dig it a lot. There's good people here. It's a good community. And yeah, obviously Salt Lake itself is kind of the Austin, right? State capital. It's got
sure,
all the liberals and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Um, but at the same time, it's got a good nightlife, good culture.
right.
That's not a bad thing.
A lot of watered down
So
beer.
yeah, I know the
Yeah,
liquor laws here are terrible. I'm
yeah,
I'm a cocktail nerd, so
right.
I'm all into nice cocktails and stuff. And it just, I mean, the weird stuff. I mean, my wife and I just took a trip outside of Utah, and just being outside of Utah and like other people, I was like, that was a double pour. Like, you
Yeah,
just that wasn't an ounce. That was way more than that. Thank you. And they have like the regulators on our bottles and all that kind of stuff, where they
right,
can't pour more than an ounce and
right.
everything.
Mhm.
You can't have kids in the bars here. So we have a baby now, and it's like, well, we can't go to a brewery and have a beer and hang out because
Right.
she's not allowed. She's under 21. She's
Yeah.
8 months old,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's the way it is.
Yeah. It's all good, man. So, so company is Odyssey.
Yep.
I'm curious
Odyssey
how
Training
you
Consulting.
I'm curious how you came up with that name, because there's
Yeah,
always a
man.
story behind it, right?
Yeah, totally. I always love the story of the Odyssey. I read it a long time ago and all that kind of stuff. It's a big maritime component. Um, my journey out of shipping was not easy. There was like the family relationship of like being away all the time, which that wears on any relationship. So finally got to the point of like, man, family life is not doing good.
Hmm.
My mental health is not doing good. I've got to make a change here versus being like that strategic decision of, okay, I'm going to go to sea one more time, and I've got this other business. Like, it wasn't like that by any means. So the idea of Odysseus is trying to get home, man. He's trying to come back from
Yep.
hard things and try to recover a life that he
I
had a
love
long
it.
time ago. So I always dug it. There's way too many companies, in my opinion, that are like mega hyper tactical kill solutions, and incorporated. So I was like, okay, and that's not the image and that's not the brand that we give off, right? Because people who carry guns on a daily basis, there's so many different mental and emotional aspects to that it so often selects out good everyday people, where so many people see their friend who's into guns, and that friend looks nothing like what they look like. They're like, I like to dress well. I like to go to parties and have fun. I like to be social. And this guy that I know, who's the girl in my Bible studies husband or whatever, he like wears outdoor tactical clothing every day and is like scanning restaurants and like won't sit with his back to the door and like is like this weirdo,
Right.
but he's super into guns. And it's like that's not attracting good everyday people to an armed lifestyle. It's
Sure.
actually discouraging them.
Sure.
So making things into like super super tactical gunfighter, deal wasn't the brand that I wanted to go with.
I like it.
So yeah, that's where Odyssey came from. My wife and I collaborate and run Odyssey together.
Nice.
And so she's been very supportive. She does a lot of the admin. She does, website work. She's doing website work today and all that kind of stuff. But we've, dialed in on what we're here for. And when I first started, it was kind of like, we'll train anything. And now I'm like, nope, like we're not here for wearing full kit and doing fire and maneuver under nods. Like I'm not going to come out with a night vision operator class.
Right.
That's just not going to be the brand. Doesn't mean you're not allowed to take those. Doesn't mean you're a dummy for taking a night vision class. It just means I'm going to recommend friends of mine that are professionals at that are going to do that. They're going to do it better for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the name, and our mission is that we educate and prepare empowered citizens to prevail against evil.
I
And
love it.
it's not a shooting to have fun training, and there are plenty of people that do that. You just want to get more comfortable with your gun. I do basic classes and stuff, but the mission that we're always centered on is of why you have that gun, why you even own it, is
Right.
for a hard day, and we want to educate you and prepare you for that hard day.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like you kind of want to create this class of gentlemen gun carriers, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just part of life. You don't have to be kitted out in 511 pants. Like,
Yep.
You're a gentleman,
Yeah.
and you are able to protect yourself and your family. And that
Totally.
sounds like
I don't
kinda
know
what
what
your
people
mission.
carry in. Like, when I look at a dude, I'm like, you have so much cargo carrying capacity. Like, you better have all of the gadgets, please. Like, if you're the 511 cargo pant guy, like, I know I'm really going to want, if you I'll say this, if you're a 511 cargo pant dude and you're carrying like a pocket 380 with no reload, that's a misallocation of valuable cargo resources. So please carry like a bunch of you need some med kits in there, man. You need like you need some flashlights, you need a compass, you need a lot. So
it's like in my teenage years, if I wore cargo pants, I had all of the things in there. They didn't have to do with guns, but I had everything I needed in all of the pockets, and
exactly.
yeah, if you're
I
going
could
to be a
survive
tactical
I got a
dude, be
lighter,
tactical, right? Yeah, exactly.
Survival kit. I got a signal mirror. I got a EPIRB radio. I got a whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, so I've always this what I call social literacy, or especially verbal literacy, or verbal engineering, verbal agility, is a huge component of what we talk about. So I have a whole class called situational awareness concepts.
Yeah.
No guns at all. You don't have to be into guns at all. It's all about how we notice danger, talking our way out of stuff. We do things like pepper spray deployment. Pepper spray is a really common option that people never train with.
Shit's fucking terrible, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. It's I've never gotten full contact sprayed.
It's not great.
So, I don't like pain, so I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, so that class we go through a lot of play acting and scenarios on, hey man, you got $1, you know what time it is? Hey, actually you're, or maybe it's not even, so the big one is like, people always look at the situational awareness. People always look at from that predatory violence perspective, which of course it fits in, of like, yeah, if you see the dude in, with his hoodie up, with his hands in his hoodie, scoping people out outside the grocery store, like that's a sketchy dude, like don't go near that dude. That's certainly an aspect of it, but then also understanding when a social situation is going south is situational awareness. And there's plenty of times where people have been exposed to violence, not by a predatory violent criminal, but by a irate, aggressive, road rage, pissed off, otherwise normal guy.
Right.
Your grocery cart scratched my Mercedes. What the fuck, man? Sorry, I said a cuss word. I know you said some cuss words.
Trust me, it's okay. For you and your audience.
Yeah,
my
I'm
audience
authentic.
is totally okay with it.
But people, that happens, and people, haven't gotten any training on, like, we don't want to shoot that dude. Like that dude's a dad.
Right.
He's just having a really bad day.
Right.
And stuff like pepper spray, like I carry pepper spray even when I carry a firearm, because I'd love the opportunity to hit somebody with some hot sauce and make a problem go away before it gets to
that's right
rolling around between two parked cars, getting my head caved in and fighting over my pistol. Because the idea that you're always going to win is another huge fallacy in our world, where people always think of like, oh, you carry a gun, so it's going to look like a gunfight, and I'm going to train gunfighting stuff and I'm going to win. And it's like, that may not be what it looks like, man. You may get handed a crap sandwich.
Yeah.
So giving people some reality there is also important.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, especially just the ability to like realize where a situation is going.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it verbal judo and like de-escalation of situations. And it's really a valuable skill, especially because like in those moments, like your temper, your anger, your stress, your anxiety, all those things are going
Ego.
to skyrocket. You're going to go into the
Yep.
red and maybe even into the black.
Yep.
And just being able to acknowledge that that's where you're headed
Right.
is huge, man.
Yep.
And I think that, again, coming from like, a military background, like these things are very common to me. Like we
Hmm.
talk about like the stress continuum, and it's all part of our training.
Totally.
And I think that like that's huge though, that in your training curriculum that you're not just talking about like, all right, let me teach you how to like clean, slide,
Yep.
safety, proper shooting style,
Yep.
tactical maneuvers that you're going to need if you need to defend your house, but also like,
Right.
hey man, let's talk about the Walmart parking lot
Right.
and the, that jerk that just wants to fucking fight. Like,
Yep.
what do you do?
Yep. Yep.
What you do is you try to
And
get the fuck away from the situation first.
right, it's like everyone's like, run away. It's like great, running away works. Like visualize running away. Like that is a proper tactic. If I've got wife, kid next to me, you know,
Right. Different
I'm
situation.
real fast, so I'm probably gonna outrun them. Sorry, honey. That's not gonna fly, right?
Right.
So how do you manage stuff? Like how do you authentically comply when compliance is the right move? There's plenty of people
Sure.
that get robbed and live to tell the tale.
It's a good point.
Lost amigo, lost a wallet, lost a cell phone, lost a watch. Yep, that sucks. You know, um, when there's times where there's not really a move to make. There's no martial arts thing. Like there was video yesterday or this morning of a not Uber Eats or DoorDash or one of those things in Chicago. Got called to delivered to a house, and 8 dudes came out of the bushes when he got out of the car, beat the crap out of him, stole his car, stole his stuff, and drove off with everything. And that dude got jumped, right? Um, there's probably not a disarm, like you may try to shoot your way out of it, but you may get your gun taken away from you, so that's a possible option.
Right.
So when can you figure out like, oh, how do you comply in a way that dissuades violence from being needed? These dudes who are totally comfortable using violence, they're very used to it. They've grown up with violence. That's normal to them. They expect, yep, I'm gonna beat this dude up a couple times, get some good shots in, and I'll be able to take that cell phone out of his back pocket. How do you do it? How do you give him your cell phone in a way that you don't get punched? All of those things are worthwhile endeavors to look at and train, and to actually practice or think about or talk through, and they just never get touched on. People go, well, you're just situational aware, and then when the bad guy, and then you draw your gun, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, sure, there's plenty of times that's not wrong, but there's a whole other side of this that people need to be able to talk through.
Absolutely.
So,
I'll tell you,
yeah.
man, when I was a young man, I had 2 instances that I can remember where I had a gun, pulled on me. I was down around Beaumont,
Okay. Yeah,
probably,
that tracks. That
probably up
tracks.
to no good.
Mhm.
And it's the craziest thing, man. Like in those moments, if you can just maintain, like if somebody intends on killing you and you're not prepared, and they draw first, and you don't have any cover and you're just in the situation, well, you're probably fucked, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes you can de-escalate even those situations, right? Like if they're just brandishing, right? Like, okay, dude, hey,
It's an extension of power. It's, displaying authority, it's an ego thing. And you can sometimes feed that and give them what they're looking for. Oh,
right,
fuck, man. You chill, 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 chill. We're all good, you know?
yep,
And yeah, that's right. It's like, great. That's right, man.
absolutely, bro,
Yep.
absolutely. What else you need,
Yep. And then I can go around the light pole and draw my gun and shoot that dude.
Yeah,
Like
and then take
there
his
are
ass.
options
Right,
that you don't always have to comply your way out of things,
right,
but you might buy the opportunity to do a response to something through authentic, social
sure,
agility. So
sure.
yeah.
So let me ask you this, man. So I have a 19-year-old in Southeast Texas. She is down there around Sam Rayburn, going to school
Okay.
in Lufkin,
Mhm.
and so when we moved her back there, pepper spray, like that's the option. That's what she has
Yep.
now. And I thought about, you know, going down the concealed carry route, and I think that we probably still will. I just wanted her
Mhm.
to kind of get a lay of the land first, be there for about a year, kind of
Sure.
understand not everything's a threat,
Mhm.
and like what would be a good recommendation, I guess, for like a first time
Making her way in the world.
making her way in the world, female,
Yep.
carry? Like, what would be a good recommendation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a common question, right? So a couple of the low hanging fruit are things like pepper spray, flashlights, a thing to carry. They may never actually use this thing in a situation, but that thing is a physical reminder of the need for that, the possibility of threats.
That's
There's
a great
plenty of people
point.
that carry, and you can think of it as a magic little talisman, right? Like little rabbit's foot. But physical reminders of where your head needs to be are good things. They're cheap, they're legal, all that kind of stuff. For pepper spray training, I recommend a couple different guys. I can send them to you after the chat, but I recommend, what's his name? FPF Training is his company name. John Murphy with FPF Training. He has a street tactics class. That's like, I think it's a full day or maybe even 2-day class. It's a big class. And there's some gun stuff in there. There's some scenario stuff in there. There's some pepper spray stuff. But if you were going to take like one class, he's got a really good program. And I think he teaches down in Texas. And then also, sorry, I'm rambling. Chuck Haggard of Agile Training and Consulting. He's a nationally recognized OC expert. I've taken some training with him in the past, and he's awesome. But just understanding how to use pepper spray effectively, and you can often buy like a water spray trainer unit,
Yeah.
and having one of those just to aim at a fence post, just to get the appreciation for range, appreciation for aiming it, is definitely a good win. So in terms of gear, those are, if you have those two things, you're in great shape. The concealed carry class, highly recommend, even if she doesn't have a gun, even if she's probably not going to do guns. The concealed carry class is a great class on the intro to the legal aspects of self-defense, because that's one of the big state requirements.
Sure.
I went to Texas class in 2016, 2015, maybe even earlier, maybe 2014. You remember the government shutdown? You must have remembered that. Remember when the government shut down for like 3 weeks?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. School shut down. They sent us home for 3 weeks, and I took my concealed carry class when I was home.
Nice.
That was so fun. That was crazy. We all left our barracks doors at like midnight. When the midnight time hit, we're just looking at each other like, there's no rules. There's no rules. Took our shirts. Hey, anarchy.
Yeah.
So either way, I think it was a 4-hour class when I took the class. I think it's an 8-hour class now.
Okay.
There is a live fire qual, but it's real basic. It doesn't even involve a holster. It's just pick the gun up, aim it, fire it, pick the gun up, aim it, fire it.
Sure.
That kind of stuff. But highly recommend that class because it's just going to get a good intro to when are the legal aspects of self-defense appropriate? When are they not appropriate? What are some situations that people have been in? All of that. And then after that, once you have the permit, when it's time to carry a gun, you can just carry a gun.
Right.
Versus the common one that I get is like, hey, I've picked up a stalker and I really need to get my permit. And I'm like, okay, well, my next class is 2 weeks out. Then it's a 2-month, then you got to get like there's a process here, and you're probably not going to see that permit in your wallet for a while, right? Now's not the time to start.
Right.
You've got a problem today. I get it. I've taught for a long time. I get to see a lot of students. I think I taught, around 700 students last year. So it was like 100 and some classes and 700 some students. But I've seen a lot of people, I need a lesson today. My husband is going to come home tonight, kind of stuff. And it's like, that sucks, And I'm like, hey, don't go home. Go to your sister's house. Like, this is not the day to go home, because that's a hard place to be.
Yeah.
So the concealed carry class allows you to carry a gun when you feel the need. You can just start. You don't have to, get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So, in terms of gear, pepper spray, flashlight. In terms of training, get that concealed carry class knocked out, and then after that, I would really look at some, physical fitness is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
We're all here to be able to have good, long, healthy lives. You should be physically fit, no matter what. But then it also is a great deselector for victimization. We just see people who are more fit get victimized less.
That's
It's
fact.
just there's a correlation there. It's not a super strong correlation, but it is there. So physical fitness, and then a medical class. If she can get into a good TCCC class, that if you like in terms of like formal training, man, having good medical skills is one of the best. It's a good confidence builder. It's useful in scenes of violence. It's useful outside scenes of violence, like car wrecks. You're way more empowered with a medical class, and it's very tame in that
Right.
emotional aspect of like, I don't want to know, a lot of
Right.
people kind of back up from self-defense classes. So I think that'd be a good start. And then eventually into a 1 or 2 day, pistol class if she's going to conceal carry.
Yeah.
There's a ton of good instructors around Houston. And so my wife went to school in Nacogdoches. She went to Stephen F. Austin.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You know exactly
Yes.
where Sam Rayburn
I've
is
made
then.
that. I've made that drive many a time.
Yep.
Many a time.
Yeah. My daughter was at Angelina College.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, there's I would say Houston's probably going to be your best bet for good pistol classes.
Right.
Big Tech's Ordnance, Thunder Gun Range. There's a bunch of good ones. Athena Gun Club, they've got good classes. So check any of those out.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's awesome. I think that's great advice. I mean, a lot of people are quick to like, I just want a gun. Well, in order to be a responsible gun owner and capable of using this thing in the way that it's intended to be used, then you need to work on your fucking self first.
Yeah. I mean, the emotional aspects are important, right? So we're talking about. I mean, I'm teaching a class in September, so we talk about the collaborative things with instructors and stuff. I've got a couple other instructors that are peers of mine that I really respect. Scott Garcia of Advent Training and Devin Soto of Tactical Cowboy Training Solutions. So we've done some collaborative classes in the past, and we're doing another one in September called the Utah Performance Expo. And it's something where all the students will train with each of us for a little bit and get a kind of taste of how our teaching styles are, what our specialties are, all that kind of stuff. And then they can take bigger classes with us later on. There'll be some competitions, there'll be some prizes, that kind of deal. And my specialty that I'm teaching on is high stakes marksmanship. So when everything rides on a single trigger press, what are not only the technical aspects of shooting a pistol and guaranteeing an outcome, right? Guarantee me success. And then also the emotional aspects of when do you know I got this all day? And when do you, I ain't got this, and having the emotional control to not pull the trigger right then.
Yeah.
So that's something we're going to talk about, and it's going to be some interesting drills to get people to start to think about, hey, carrying a firearm, like the potential for hitting a bystander is not insignificant. And that happens. You shoot the wrong person, shoot a person at the wrong time. Legally, that can be a problem where a second and a half ago, this guy was a lethal threat, and burning one right into him would have been just fine. But then the situation changed. He complied, turned and ran away, something, and you made the wrong choice at the wrong time. So getting people to dive into that's important. So yeah, the gun's not always the solution.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that's really underestimated too, is what your adrenaline does to your stability in shooting a firearm. So, obviously you have trained to this, and I've been trained to this. Physical exertion gets that heart rate up.
Yep.
And that's the best way to simulate it.
It's close. It's a good analog. It's the best analog for live fire modality. So so we'll call a stress shoot, right? Which I know you've done.
Yep.
But getting people gassed out, having them run far, having them lift stuff, all that kind of stuff certainly adds a big component to it.
But it's not the same.
It's not the same. Force on force training is the best option. So good structured force on force scenarios that people get put in are the best way to get an actual adrenal response and have them work under adrenaline. That includes the decision-making aspects of, all that kind of stuff. And it really kind of extracts out what works and what doesn't with that person and their skill level in that situation.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So, hey, man, let's move on to this. So tell me if I'm wrong, but it kind of feels like you're living your dream life right now.
Kind of. I have a full-time job. Everyone's got a day job, right? So I've had a day job for a long time. I also enjoy my day job. But my passion of Odyssey is really important to me. I get to, continue to expand, and the more I put myself out there, the more good feedback I get from people who've been in this game a long time and say, hey, you're actually on track to, have something unique. If I was just a cookie cutter example of a dude I trained with, I don't have anything unique to say. That's not why I'm here, right? So yeah, I've been really lucky. I've been really blessed. We've had a lot of really good things happen, especially over this last year, to invest more time into Odyssey and grow the classes, get the students trained better, get more training opportunities with other people. So we're doing well.
Love it, man. And so I guess what's the 5-year, maybe even 10-year plan look like? And I know
World
that things
domination,
always change, right? But like,
world domination, world
yes,
domination,
world
right?
domination,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I mean the ultimate apex of this industry for us is being a full-time traveling instructor, right? When you look at the guys that do the best at this business, right? So not a passion anymore, not just a hobby,
Sure.
but a business. Travel in the country, teaching very large classes to lots of students. I don't know if that'll ever be me. I got a wife, got baby. I love my family. I love my community and stuff. And there's an element that I have friends and guys I've trained with, and they travel 40 weeks a year.
Ooh,
You know, they're you've seen like the what's the movie Up in the Air, right, with
right.
George Clooney,
Yeah.
right, where he's like a traveling business dude, and he's
Right.
like got an apartment, it's empty, has no furniture in it. He sees it once every 2 months. He hates being there, right?
Right.
His life is on the road. There's dudes that do that. I don't think that's for me. Totally fine. It's just I enjoy, but I also am open to travel and hosting. I'm working on some stuff actually down in Texas for probably fall of next year. So that'll give me the chance to go home, see family, all that kind of stuff. My wife can come home, come with me, see family, all that kind of stuff. She can hang out in the ranch in Brenham, and I can travel to Texas, Louisiana area, teach some classes, and then we'll hop back up to Utah. So that's in the works, and we'll keep investing there. There's some product ideas that are in the works that are, again, on mission, specific to helping people prevail against evil things, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at some products to come out with to keep expanding. Nothing revolutionary, nothing that's going to change the world or anything like that. I've got friends that do that here locally that I love, that have made some really cool products that they're like artists. They're like, oh yeah, what if we
Right.
just did this crazy thing that no one's ever thought of before, right?
Yeah.
But Odyssey's looking at some products that again going to equip people better. That when they come to us, we can better equip them with good, reasonable tools that can
Sure.
again fit that interdisciplinary approach to whatever it's. If it's a medical kit, a flashlight, and a holster, right, or something that, man, you can solve a lot of problems with a little bit. If you've got,
Yeah.
you got a concealed carry gun, you got a flashlight, you got a med kit.
Yeah.
You can solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So we're looking at stuff like that. And then the instructor development part is really important for me. I didn't get that. I did all this on my own, which I didn't. You probably that probably shouldn't have been the way I did it. But a lot of guys say, "Hey, find a mentor, find a mentor, find a mentor," and which is a good thing. It just, for me, I had to build all this and figure it out kind of from scratch. So, I've got 8 guys right now that are, staff instructors for me that I really enjoy the opportunity to invest in, and that it's not about them teaching for me or anything like that. Like, they teach their own classes sometimes, teach their own private clients sometimes, and I'm like, yeah, man, if you're doing it, if I feel like what I'm doing is good and I'm doing a good job, and you're learning that and doing a good job by proxy, guess what? We have another person in the Salt Lake Valley who got a good training class, because
Yeah.
it's about the student, right? It's not about the, brand or
Sure.
anything like that. It's about the fact that we care about the people who come to our class. We want them to succeed. We've defined a problem that's realistic for them that they need our training for. So this isn't just fun. And we want them to succeed. And I've gotten those emails before. I've never had a student in a lethal force encounter yet. I don't necessarily want them to be in one, but if they are in one, I want them to win. And if I do this business long enough, I'll probably get one. But I've gotten some emails of, hey, this really scary situation happened, this home invasion happened. LE guys that are like, hey, I had to, clear a warehouse in low light, and I took your low light class, and I had the confidence to do that well. So those are very touching things to get, and that's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
So if we can keep doing that, man, and then also a private jet, if we can do that.
Yeah,
I
mean,
yeah, I'm just, it would just help me with a lot of my things if I could just have a private
listen,
jet.
bro.
Yeah.
Listen, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, "Where the fuck are the flying cars, man?" Like, I was promised flying cars 20 years ago, and they're still not here. It's starting to annoy me, honestly. Like, we've got everything else, no fucking flying cars. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
So
I know you said you're a command master chief. I'm trying to age you right now in my head. I'm like, okay, if he's command master chief, you probably joined the military in this year. I'm trying to figure out how old you are. But
so I graduated from Vider in '98.
Okay.
Didn't join until 2001.
Gotcha.
So I was 21 when I joined, and I'm 43 now. So
Okay.
yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm still
You don't
doing
look
okay.
a day over 52, man.
Still doing
You
okay,
look
man.
great.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you just don't look at the face, you would
Right.
never know that I'm
Yeah.
43.
Yeah. You have the back of a healthy 78-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And my feet are fucked up too.
Yeah.
But hey, man, Chris, bro. So let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Sure.
And I just want to ask you if you have kind of any parting words or any advice or any message that you want to kind of get to the audience, man.
Yeah, dude, I'm super grateful for you having me on. It's always good to talk to people who get the life, know the naval life a little bit, and can empathize. No one knows that here. Every time I say I'm a merchant mariner, no one's what I'm talking
Wait,
about.
what?
So yeah, man, this is super awesome. You're fantastic. It's great to see what you guys are doing out there. We got to do like part 2 and talk about China or something.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about China. But yeah, no, I'd love to keep coming on or anything like that. It's great to talk to you. I really appreciate the opportunity to get the name out there and continue good training. Odyssey_TC on Instagram, OdysseyTrainingLLC.com is my website. All my classes are posted there. If you want to host me nationally, I'm always open to hosting conversations. So if we can get some people together, again, the problem is specific. My classes are kind of unique out there. Everyone can teach pistol and rifle class, right? But how do we make things contextualized for civilian self-defense and give you a good training and good training roadmap for that is what I specialize in. So yeah, check me out and keep spreading the word. If you've got a friend in the Salt Lake area or something like that, pass it my way. Would love to get them set up with training.
For sure, man. Great conversation. First of all, Chris, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And I do foresee a place where we're going to stay in touch and probably do some things together over the next several years.
Totally.
Maybe set some things up down in Texas where I'm going to be. I'll talk to you about some of those hopes, dreams, aspirations that I have
100%.
offline. But yeah, man, great conversation. I knew it would be. You're super engaging and obviously very passionate and smart about the thing that you do, and you're doing well at it, and that's what we love here on the Rising Sun podcast. So
thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's kind to say.
No, it's genuine. I have this saying. Somebody called me out on the last episode I did. Like, I just say it, and now it's going to be weird because I fucking like set it up, right? But like, I don't blow sunshine up people's asses, man. Like, you probably heard that saying. I don't know where I heard it from, but if you
wouldn't be a master chief otherwise.
Yeah, I don't
say that.
Yeah,
it's not your job.
I don't compliment people unless they deserve it. So
right.
Anyways, but no, thank you very much, man. And hey, for the audience, I'll just leave you like this. So here's Chris Cook, another example of the type of guests that we have on this show, and they serve as an example for you that if you're trying to chase your dreams, you're trying to do the thing that you're passionate about, you're trying to build a life for yourself. The only way to do it is just attack it and like keep going. Because if you stop, you're not going to get there. That's as simple as it gets, right? So keep going, chase your dreams, do big things in your life, and keep